After the biggest monthly jump in unemployment since Reagan, with gasoline topping $4 a gallon, John McCain today unveiled a new campaign message that Barack Obama will be bad for the economy. Also, for a second, it sounded like he was supporting the reintroduction of prohibition. Our fourth story tonight, McCain telling a small business summit today that Obama's economic plans could plunge America into, well, what we have now. McCain rejected Obama's criticism that his presidency would be a third Bush term, portraying himself as a new kind of Republican, attacking Obama with the traditional line used by the old kind of Republicans, tax and spend.
Too many Republicans in Congress became indistinguishable from the big spending Democrats that they used to oppose. The only power of government that could stop them was the power of the veto, and it was rarely used. If that authority is entrusted to me, I will use the veto as needed. I will veto every single bill with earmarks.
Or beer marks. McCain's slip, if not a hint at reinstating the 18th Amendment, was possibly a Freudian reference to his wife's wealthy family, which owns a beer distributorship, occasionally propping up his ailing campaign when trouble brewed. Whining aides were at loggerheads, and his speeches got boos, even among crowds that were mostly suburban. Today, McCain is still struggling to convince voters that the economic plan of a candidate so close to Bush won't be full of Schlitz. Obama today responded to the claim that his tax policies, including opposition to extending the Bush tax cuts, amount to a tax increase.
My tax plan will cut taxes for 95% of workers, because we need to put money back into the pockets of struggling middle-class families and close the egregious tax loopholes that have exploded over the last 8 years. My plan eliminates capital gains taxes entirely for the small businesses and startups that are the backbone of our economy, as opposed to John McCain's plan, which would tax these businesses. Now, I've said that John McCain is running to serve out a third Bush term. But the truth is, when it comes to taxes, that's not being fair to George Bush.
McCain's campaign at odds with itself over how to refute that claim, as McCain himself told NBC's Brian Williams Obama is running for Jimmy Carter's second term, while a top advisor suggested Obama resembles Bush. This despite McCain's lockstep with Bush on tax cuts for the wealthy, big business, and gas companies, against more health coverage for children, for deregulating mortgage and investment firms, privatizing Social Security, and more. That confusion understandable, as McCain himself once said he could not, in good conscience, support the Bush tax cuts, who today told those small business owners the estate tax was unfair just 2 years after defending it, and as Huffington Post reports, 6 years after refuting the GOP talking point that the estate tax destroys small businesses. As our heads spin over that, let's bring in the Washington correspondent for the New Yorker magazine, Ryan Lizza. Thanks again for your time tonight, Ryan.
Thanks, Keith. How are you?
The Wall Street Journal concluded that the McCain tax cuts require massive deficits or unprecedented cuts in spending, both of which would gut an economy that's in a weakened state as ours is now. Is it conceivable that John McCain actually does not even have a serious plan?
Well, look, he's following the same path as Reagan and the current president as far as promising two things that no Republican president has been able to deliver, and that is huge tax cuts offset by huge spending cuts. And this happened in the 80s, and what did we get? We didn't get the spending cuts, we got the tax cuts, and we got huge deficits. The same thing has happened over the last 8 years. So unless you see a politician, unless you see John McCain outline line by line, earmark by earmark, program by program, exactly what he's going to cut as president, don't buy this. It's not going to happen, because to do that, he would have to cut things that he knows are very popular and are going to cost him the election.
As we're entering into this twilight zone in which Mr. Obama said that comparing Bush and McCain on tax cuts and taxes was now unfair to Bush, and the Obama advisor suggested that, or the McCain advisor suggested that Obama was acting like Bush in terms of taxes. On merits, those three names, Bush, McCain, Obama, which one of these things is not like the other?
Well, clearly Obama is unlike McCain and Bush. I mean, look, McCain has had a long evolution over the last 8 years on tax cuts. In 2000, he represented a completely different wing of the Republican Party. He ran to the left of George Bush on taxes. He was a deficit hawk. During the run-up to the war, Same thing. He was arguing that we shouldn't cut taxes in wartime. As he became closer and closer to his party's nominee, he became more doctrinaire and on this issue. And look, let's be frank. He couldn't have been elected. He couldn't have won the nomination unless he had changed his position on tax cuts and embraced the Bush tax cuts. I mean, that's just an iron law of Republican primary politics. He wouldn't have been able to be where he is unless he had done it.
But that necessarily leads him to being in the position where he opposed the tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, when they were popular, and now he's defending them when they're not popular.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's sort of been unlucky here. You know, the tragedy is that he represented a wing of the party that, at this moment in the Republican Party, a party that needs a little freshening up. He could have defended that position and made the case. I think he would have been given a lot of credit for taking on his own party on this issue. But as you point out, he's in this very weird position where he's now defending the president's, you know, signature policy at a time when what his campaign would like to do is disassociate himself from that president as much as possible. And, you know, it's a bind that he's kind of stuck with for the rest of this campaign. Yeah,
it's a buy high, sell low strategy. But the final point on this, when he's claimed, and maybe this is now self-defense, this argument, I don't know much about the economy, when he sticks to that interpretation of his own previous words, because it's better than saying, well, I do understand something about it, or at least Phil Gramm does, and he understands how to manipulate it to the benefit of the corporations at the expense of the people.
Well, look, I think whether he cares, I don't know how much he cares about it. I do think that he thinks a lot more about foreign policy, and he does believe that right now the key challenge for the next president is going to be abroad, not domestically. Unfortunately, this campaign may hinge a lot more on domestic policy. And he's brought in the usual suspects that you bring in when you're a Republican nominee, and he hasn't shown a lot of independence on the issue the way he did in 2000.
I think he'd have better luck bringing back prohibition. Ryan Lizza, the Washington correspondent for the New Yorker magazine. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Keith.